Hey there, it's Mike Langford. Welcome back to the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. It's so wonderful to be with you again. Frankly, I've missed you, baby. It's been a couple of months since we published our last episode. Now, some of that was by design, and some of that was just, summer stuff. My son graduated high school. We took a trip, then we took another trip. Then, by the way, we had to get our son off to college. That was pretty cool. My daughter started high school. So you had all that type of stuff going on. But the real reason why there's been a hiatus for the show is we have been retooling the show. You're going to notice a new look and feel. And frankly, if you're seeing this on video, you're noticing a new look and feel. You're also, if you're looking at your Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon, the YouTubes, or wherever you like to get your podcast jam on, you're also noticing a new look and feel, right? You're seeing that new design. Hope you like it, by the way. Love to hear what you think. Really leaning into the modern financial advisor concept with a little, mid-century modern feel. That's where that's coming from. We kind of went with a little Hitchcocky feel on the design. I hope you like it. Let me know. I love to hear from you. Anyway, the show is going to be basically the same, right? I'm here. You're here. Carl's here. That's a Phineas and Ferb reference for those of you who are tuned in. Anyway, that stuff hasn't changed. Great guests, great topics, great strategies, introducing new tech, all that good stuff for the modern financial advisor and the modern financial advisory firm. But we're also going to have some new sponsors, and that's really cool too, right? To have new companies involved in this podcast. Can't wait to introduce you to them. Awesome, awesome stuff. Now, let's get to today's show. Today's show, I have Paul McManus, the author of The Short Book Formula. And we're going to be talking about, why financial advisors should be writing a short book and how they can use it in their business to grow their business and to just expand in new ways. And that's all awesome stuff. But also, Paul's going to talk to you about a little bit about his business and how they do it, how they make all this type of stuff work. So really, really good stuff. I loved it. I tell you what, as mentioned at the beginning of the show, Paul and I hit it off really well. And we feel like we've been dudes for a long time. And I love when I have a guest like that, where I just feel really comfortable with them. The conversation flows. I'm sure we'll have Paul on as a guest in the future as well. Just an excellent guest, lots of great content. I think you're going to love him as much as I did. Okay, well, that's enough of an intro from me. Let's get to our conversation with Paul McManus. Well, Paul McManus, welcome to the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. So wonderful to see you.
It's great to see you as well. Excited to be here.
Dude, I would be excited to be there too, because you are in my favorite place in the world, San Diego. And I'm jealous of you. I'm very envious, particularly today, because it's like another 100-degree day here in Austin. And it blows, dude. So I'm very envious.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. And it's interesting that you're in Texas. About, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago, I had San Diego fatigue. I'm like, another great day, blue sky, perfect weather. I'm sick of this. And I made the decision to move to actually Texas. I went to Houston. And it was only then that I realized how I actually missed San Diego, specifically for the weather. I thought, Texas and Houston and Texans are amazing. I love them. But the weather, it's hard to beat San Diego's weather.
No, it is just such a beautiful place too. If you've never been to San Diego, it is exactly as good as they say it is. You have Southern California traffic, but if you're in Austin, people are whining about the traffic here all the time, which I find comical because I'm from the Boston area originally, and you don't know traffic until you've been to Boston. So
of course,
10 o'clock at night.
Of course, traffic. Of course, traffic for me is pretty much I get up, I stumble over 2 Boston Terriers, I walk across the apartment, and I have arrived at my office.
Very good. Hey, by the way, Boston University alum, go Terriers. Boston Terriers. By the way, thank you for mentioning I'm glad we brought up our locales, because that really does explain the portrait on the background, the print in the background of the Longhorn there. I'm like, why does he have a steer in the background? He's in San Diego. I don't remember on my flight into there seeing many cattle ranches, and that probably explains.
That's a great observation. I don't have a good answer for you other than my wife wanted to make the background a little bit more fancy, and that was her choice. Although, again, she was with me in Texas, but she's originally from Japan, so I'm not quite sure what her thinking was.
Well, there you go. Okay. Well, wives are great for helping us decorate.
Yes,
Fantastic stuff. Awesome. Keeping us dressed well so we don't look like idiots when we leave the house and all. Well, all right. Let's jump into the reason why you're here, because I have to say, Paul, I feel like you and I are kindred spirits. If people can't already tell from the way that we're already, it's like flowing on the show. Prior to this, by the way, we only had one 30-minute prep call and a couple of emails between us. So people would be surprised because they sound like we're old buddies, but it may seem weird to members of the audience, but if they've read your book, and I'm going to get this, it is right here, it's in full screen. All right. The Short Book Formula, a financial professional's guide to writing a book in 6 weeks to attract ideal clients. If they read this book, they are going to get it why you and I are simpatico here, because one sentence that I think should get our loyal listeners' heads kind of bobbing here, and the viewers nodding along as well, is a sentence on page 30. And it reads, the single most valuable benefit of becoming an author is accelerating the speed of trust.
Yep.
And that sounds an awful lot like some of the phraseology I've used over the years of accelerating relationships, whether it's via social media, podcasts, or video, just accelerating kind of the relationship between you and folks. So, man, let's jump into it. Can you walk us through what you mean by accelerating the speed of trust and like how you've come to this realization?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna take you back in time for about
I love time
7 or
machines.
8 years. And I launched my company More Clients More Fun in 2015. Prior to that, I did something completely different, completely unrelated to financial professionals, unrelated to online marketing. And I in 2015 I launched my business, and it was based around helping financial advisors use LinkedIn to generate more leads and appointments and ultimately more clients. In 2016, I had massive success with a client of mine at the time. His name was Shane Walls. And Shane was already a very successful life insurance producer. He's doing a couple $100,000 a year of target premium. And through our collaboration, he was able to go from that to over $2.5 million of target premium in, I want to say, about 2 years.
Wow.
And so this was my introduction really to the world of working with financial professionals. And as you can imagine, with that success, his producer group, his, all the people around him, his, life insurance carrier, et cetera, they're like, okay, what are you doing? What's your secret sauce? What's going on here? And that elevated me from working with just, single individuals that found me online to suddenly now I was speaking at events. I was being brought in to speak at big events for, big influential organizations. Now, I can continue the story, or if you want to.
Oh no, let's go! I can't wait to hear this story. This is great. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, because I tell you why I like this, because first of all, I think people do like origin stories, but it's already the story is resonating, I think, with our audience, right? Financial advisors, and many of them are insurance providers who also kind of provide financial advice, whether that's through annuity products or others. And understanding, like, wait a minute, somebody made that big of a leap, that almost a 10x jump in their revenue, right? And their income in a short period of time. They want to hear about it. So let's go.
100%, yeah. And so, I felt that I had struck gold. It's like, if I can do this with Shane, I can do this with everybody. Imagine, how well I'm going to do creating more Shane Wallses. And what I found was that Shane was a little bit of a unicorn. Just to be honest, he was a little bit of a unicorn. And, for maybe various reasons, just personality, whatever he brought to the table initially, and what I added to that allowed for those results. And so as I continued to build my LinkedIn business around helping advisors, and at that time, primarily life insurance producers, get more leads, I had a range of results. I had some people that were successful, a lot of people kind of in that moderate range, and some people that were not so successful. And I like to think of myself as a innovator. So, status quo bores me. And even when it's working, as soon as something's working, it's like, I want to see, okay, how can I break this and make it better? And so I've always been fascinated by the topic of influence more broadly. And as I continued to watch and see results and kind of think, okay, how can we make this more effective? How can we create more Shane Wallses as a result of our
Mm.
process? I stumbled upon another person whose name was Matt Zagula, and he's the founder of a group called the Smart Advisor Network. He wrote a book through Forbes called Smart Retirement, and we ended up working closely together for roughly 3 years. And the innovation at that point was that he had really a turnkey system for financial
Mm.
advisors built around his book, and we essentially married what he already had developed with what I had developed on the LinkedIn side, put it together, and immediately we started to see much more consistent results for advisors in terms of getting leads and getting appointments, and much higher close ratios when it came to
Hmm.
turning leads, appointments into new clients and new revenue. Again, though, I'm an innovator. Once something's working, guess what I want to do? I want to break it. I want
Yeah.
to think, how can I make this even better? And so, everything has its strengths, everything has its weaknesses, and a few of the weaknesses that I saw. So first of all, I learned a ton, and so I'm very grateful to Matt, just for about 2 or 3 years that we worked together, and the lessons that I learned and the insights that really you have to be hands on and working with someone. I mean, almost like a mentor that's been doing it to really
Right.
quickly absorb those lessons and get to the next level. And during that time, my own observations came to some of the challenges with that approach was that an advisor handing out someone else's book is okay, but an advisor handing out their own book would be even better, because the
Yeah.
authority and the credibility and all of those things reflect to the author, not to the person who's distributing the book. So that was one of the key things. The other thing, and this became the birth of the short book formula, is that some of the consistent feedback that I got from the dozens and dozens of Smart Advisor um, clients that we mutually worked with who were doing this approach was that, yeah, we sent out the book and no one's reading it. you
Yeah.
know,
They get a lot of response of TLDR, too long, didn't read.
and so it's like people are like appreciative. There's like
Yeah.
sure, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day, no one's really reading it, and it's
Yeah.
expensive to send out. I mean, to
Yeah.
send out a physical copy was like something like $15, and so it's like, I don't know if you ever are a Seinfeld fan, but there was an episode where it's like, this is probably a little bit off color, but is he sponge worthy? And I don't know why I went
Yeah.
there, but
Book worthy.
but it's
Look,
almost like
we are everybody's adults here. I highly doubt we got any under 18-year-olds listening to our podcast, right? And no, it's totally true. You have a finite. Yeah, go look at the Spongeworthy episode. By the way, if you haven't
just
seen
go to
it,
YouTube,
Seinfeld,
put Seinfeld Spongeworthy, you'll get it.
yeah,
If it doesn't immediately
a
come to mind, but it came
relatively
down to
finite resource.
it came down to, is this person book worthy? It's like, I don't want to
Yeah,
give away this book if they're not like really
yeah,
committed. And so just analyzing this, hearing success stories, seeing challenges over the course of 3 years, I realized again that number one, the media improvement could be is that the advisor should be the author, because
yeah,
that elevates their status, creates more credibility, and in a world, especially online, that is the currency. There's plenty of opportunity, there's plenty of
yeah,
leads, there's a whole ocean full of leads out there for you, but to successfully attract them to you and seamlessly convert them from lead to new ideal client,
yeah.
you need to have your own authority, status, credibility, etc. And
Okay.
then that leads into the second thing, is that the message is only as good as it's consumed. And so I don't want people to get
Mm,
the book and say, oh, wow, you're an author, but I have no idea what that means. I want them to actually not just use the book for as a lead tool, but as a sales tool. It becomes invaluable. If you can get your ideal prospect to first raise their hand, show interest, but then as part of the sales process, to take the time to read the book and make that a reasonable request that they do so, what you'll find, or what I've found, and what the people that do this process have found, is that by the time you're having your first and at max second call, they're like, okay, what's next? How do I sign up?
yeah,
So you radically condense a sales cycle from a process of having to, multiple meetings, chasing people. Why did they go dark? Why aren't they calling me back? to
Yeah.
they're scheduling on your calendar. They're asking, when can we start? You're saying, I have a waiting list. We can
Yeah.
squeeze you in next month, maybe sooner. And so it just completely flips the script. So they need to be an author, but they also need to write a book that the reader can realistically read. And so I found that with a short book, it's around 12,000 words. It can give or take a couple thousand. But
Sure.
it's 12,000 words, and the idea is that someone can read or listen to an audiobook in roughly 60 to 90 minutes. It makes the point, it makes the impact. It takes oftentimes what could be dull financial jargon and turns it into interesting stories, compelling stories that make the point, so that by the end of it, when you're saying, hey, and the logical next step is to reach out and talk to me, person's like, I want this.
Yeah. What's really interesting about this? I mean, this builds on first of all, this is an age-old concept, right? Of like when people read your book, you are by definition some sort of authority figure. We're going to be talking about that here in a second, but just because they've chosen to consume this, you clearly know what you're doing. It's on this paper, and we've been brought up to think that way. But content marketing has been working this way for a very long time, right? That if somebody is consuming your content, and whether that content is in print in a book, it's audio book format, it's video, or it's a blog post, or it's social media, they are seeing you there. And now they're hearing it in their head. They're reading this, unless they already know what your voice sounds like, and they're thinking, and they digest it. And if they stick with like you said, about 100-page book, 12,000 words, if they actually work their way through this, they're committed too, right?
Yeah.
So to your point of accelerating trust, it's working. Right?
It also creates a process for you or a track to run on, because again, with authority marketing, it's not just this fancy concept. It's like, oh yeah, I want to be an authority and I want to have status and credibility. It's, you need to walk you need to walk, what is it, you need to talk the talk and walk the walk, which means that you need to be willing, that if someone isn't willing to go through your process as you've laid it out, they're not a good fit.
Sure.
I work with a variety of advisors, and today I work primarily with, I call them a holistic, financial advisor, wealth managers, life insurance producers, tax attorneys, CPAs that do advanced tax planning. So just kind of this whole range, and that's why I say financial professionals, because it kind of encompasses this whole range.
Yeah.
But I routinely get people that do $1 billion of AUM schedule on my calendar. I don't know who they are until we have had the talk. But at first I'd be like, oh wow, that's like really important person. I need to change the way that I go about this. It's like, no, it's like they scheduled. I'm going to send them at this point my audio book and say, hey, before our call, do me a favor and can you read or listen to this book? And then that way you'll have a basic understanding of my philosophy, how we work, and how I can help you, so that when we do talk, we can really talk about what's most important for you. But I want that pre-education to be there, and that's what really facilitates the speed of trust, facilitates the speed of going from lead to appointment to new ideal client.
Yeah, I really like that, and you call that out in the book, that notion of like asking somebody to read something that is a reasonable investment, and so that could be reading, could be watching a video, could be whatever. Asking somebody to basically make a small investment before they earn your time, right?
Yep.
It's like a filter, right? Like, hey, there's 7 billion people in the world. Not all of them are right for you as a client. It's 330 plus million people here in the United States, right? So you're not going to run out of clients. Trust me. And you're no longer, restricted to your neighborhood for your client base, right? You can actually be national now with things like Zoom and so forth. So you can afford to be choosy. These are the people I want to work with, people who actually are being willing to follow whatever my system is that I put out into the world, and understand it.
And part of that is that I'd like to say that what precedes is what follows. And so if you establish the process in the sales process, guess what happens? They become an ideal client. They become someone who, as an advisor, to really earn the right of trusted advisor, they have to respect you, but they also have to be willing to follow your leadership. I think a successful advisor is primarily a good leader, and they need to be able to influence their clients to make decisions that they wouldn't necessarily make on their own. And so, if you come in the other way and you're chasing, you're like, you come across as a salesperson, it's like, how, it's like, call me, and all these different things. Guess what? they're going to probably be not the best client because they see you as a salesperson. They don't see your time as important. All these myriad of things that, cause all of the problems that most people, unfortunately suffer from in their day-to-day operations. And so it really just flips the whole script. But it takes a vision of that's what you want. And then it really takes, I think, the determination and really, I want to say boldness or the courage to say, this is how I'm going to live my life. And by extension, this is how I'm going to run my practice.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. One of the other core tenets of your business and by extension, the book, obviously,
Yeah.
is this concept of authority marketing.
Yep.
And we've kind of, put our finger on it a little bit here so far.
Yeah.
So let's spend some time there because I think it's really powerful. And I think it's different than just the notion of trust, right? It's getting a little more granular, if you want to call it that, because anybody could write a book. And like, if I wrote a book about dog walking and tried to use it to get financial clients, I'm not sure that it's going to work, right? It's got to be somewhat relevant to the audience and relevant to the services I provide. And so for me, it feels like it's really related to niche marketing. Mm-hmm. But it feels like it's carrying a little more weight, right? So I wonder if you might kind of expand on the concept of authority marketing and what you mean by that concept.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a little bit of background. I'm a student of marketing, have been since, I want to say 2014. And out of all the people that I've studied, probably my guru of choice, as I like to say, is Dan Kennedy. And Dan Kennedy, if you're familiar with his work, I mean, I think he, talks about and teaches authority marketing like no one else. And so a lot of what I've learned is from him. And the idea behind authority marketing is that and how to really elevate from just niche marketing, let's say, is that there's certain things that just, human beings are wired to respect. And I think and trust. I think there's three things. I think it comes down to three things really. That it's speaking, and what we're doing right now in a podcast, hosting a podcast, being a guest on a podcast, speaking on stage, whatever it may be, video perhaps, that's a form of authority because, and I think the real reason is that most people are afraid of it, right? So when we see someone that goes out there and actually does it, we immediately have respect for them. And by extension, if they're, they're willing to put themselves out there and talk to a group, there's this instinctual feeling that they know what they're talking about. I mean, sometimes they can prove us wrong, obviously, but, just the bias is in their favor. And the same thing happens with authorship, is that with authorship, it's probably on a lot of people's bucket list. I mean, most advisors I've talked to that are not authors, it's like, oh, I wish I could do that, but, don't know what to do and what the next step is, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just the reality that most people, writing a book, we try to make it easy, but at the same time, it takes effort. It takes a willingness to put your ideas out there and, and have ideas, right? Have an opinion. And because of all those things, I think just human beings are ingrained to highly respect and trust people who, speak and write books. And of course, as you amplify that, I mean, if you watch the news, for example, and you have someone who's, on whether it's Fox or CNN or whatever, and now they're talking on the news, suddenly it's like, wow, this person's a celebrity. And so so I use the word celebrity lightly. So it doesn't mean that, you're suddenly Paris Hilton, someone like that, but it does create this effect that, you have, your time's valuable. I think at the end of the day, you know what you're talking about. Your time's valuable. And I'm lucky as a consumer or a prospect or client to be able to work with you and get some of your valuable time. And by extension, I mean, the magic of it is not only do I appreciate the work that you do for me, but now I'm excited to brag to my friends and family and colleagues. Oh, I get to work with this person and they're special. And, it flips the script again on referrals. It goes from this, oh, who can you refer me to? It's like, hey, I have like these 5 people who I'd love to refer to you. How can I do it?
Yeah, I can tell you that's one of the things that jumped out to me. You talked about in the book, you talk about asking for referrals and you can use the book as a mechanism to do that. But one of the things that jumped out to me was some of the books that you have and your team have helped write are very specific, right? Like they're for nurses and their financial well-being or whatever. It's like, oh, so not only are we talking about a specific audience in terms of, and we're diving into audience a little bit more later, but we're also talking about a problem that audience has, right? Business owners who want to pay less taxes, or so. It's like, oh, okay, so it's not just any business owner; it's business owners who are really concerned with taxes. Not every business owner is overly concerned, with tax management, right? So I like that, because we're not only talking about, again, a specific audience, right? So the niche, right? We're talking about a problem that they may have, and because we have a book, we have some thoughts on paper in front of them. We've demonstrated we have an authority on you and the problem you have.
100%.
Come talk to me.
100%. I was just on the podcast yesterday with a gentleman who you may know, Bill Cates. And he's been in the industry for a long time, and his whole thing is referrals. And he just wrote a book called Radical Relevance. And so I just love the concept of relevance. Part of this whole equation is that, you could step back and say, hey, I can help people make more money. I can help people save on taxes. But guess what? You're relevant to nobody at that point, because the message just falls flat. And so you really have to pick and choose who you want to be relevant to. I mean, that's like decision number one. And then once you've made that decision, you really have to understand the world from their perspective. I'll give you an example of this. One of my clients, and he's in the book, we talk about him. His name is Michael Budnick. And so when we started, he'd just written a book for, business owners and professionals broadly. But immediately it's like, okay, that's, it's going to fall flat, because it's not really specific. It's not specific enough to any group. And so we've recrafted that to this book here, which is The Prosperous Nurse: Your Roadmap to Wealth, Health, and Happiness. And this book is geared to make him super relevant to a very specific group of people, which is not just healthcare professionals, but nurses. And so you can imagine if you're a nurse and you saw this book, it speaks to you. It's like, hey, I need to know more about that.
I'm a nurse. Yeah.
Whereas versus maybe the other title could be, I help people save more money for a retirement book.
Yeah.
I don't care about that. So you're becoming much more relevant to a specific group, but then by extension, and this is where I really love I think it's the synergy between authorship. Authorship by itself is good, and I think speaking by itself is good, but there's a magical synergy between the two, because, I mean, what am I doing myself right now? I published my book at the beginning of this year. Guess what my next step was? I need to go on some podcasts.
That's right. Yeah. Get out here and start spreading the gospel, as they would. What I like about, it's really true. It's, it's very similar to what I tell people about podcasts, right? It's like, listen, one of the things you may be concerned with is the size of the audience when you start speaking, or you're writing a book. You might think, oh, well, maybe only a few hundred people might read it or listen to my podcast. And it's like, yeah, that's awesome. Are you kidding me? If a few hundred people come and listen to a podcast, that is amazing. If you've done a good job making sure that you're talking about the things that a specific audience cares about, because that's what you want. You want to be talking to, in my case, the modern financial advisor, or people who want to become a modern financial advisor, right? In your case, it's financial professionals who would like to grow their business, and you're going to show them how they can use a book, a short book that they can write to develop authority and so on and so forth, and use this as a tool. I love it.
And as soon as, and then the question is, how do I market this? And, my specialty is helping them on LinkedIn. But then the next thing is, well, you should start a podcast. You should go talk to Mike.
It's true. It's and we're while we're here on the audience, and I had this down on my notes of like, we were talking about this in a little while. So we're already in it here. So forgive me for jumping ahead, but look, man, you got to know who you're talking to. I tell people that all the time, and I'm sure you spend a lot of time with your clients talking about that, because it is one of your core steps, right? You asked a question. I think question number 3 you asked them is, who is your primary audience?
No.
And I use that phrase too. Instead of niche market or target market, even though it's in that category, I say, who's the audience? Who are you talking to?
No.
Because as an example, I'll give you a very specific example. I always tell people, like, look, if your clients are, let's just say, owners of a blue collar business like auto shops or whatever, you're not going to show up to every meeting suit and tie. You should look, a little more casual. The language you use on your website should speak to the things that are important to them, the way that they talk. I'm not talking crass language. I'm just talking about, don't try to win them over with, $10 words, right? Versus if I'm talking to somebody in the tech industry, I might want to speak about in a way that shows I know the tech industry.
Yep.
Heck, I want to go native too. I need to be showing up at tech events.
Yep.
I need to be showing up at other things that are relevant to that audience. And I always tell people, like, you can think about it like this. Some people use the word client to describe their customer. Some people use the word diner. Some people use the word patron, and some people use customer or whatever, or member.
Yeah.
Right. So if that can be true, then you need to start thinking about your audience that way too. Like, what are the things they care about? What's important to them? Because it makes all the difference. They automatically know if they're in the right spot, just as somebody knows they've picked up the right book, right?
100%. As you were saying that, one more example came to mind for me about authority. I think for a lot of us, even though we probably think of ourselves as confident and whatnot, I think, a lot of us suffer to some degree from imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
It's like, who am I to do whatever? And
Sure.
what I love about authorship and how it lends itself to establishing authority marketing is that once you have your book, it's amazing that your confidence naturally goes up because it is an accomplishment.
Yeah.
And you start seeing the feedback you get from those around you. Suddenly it's like, oh, you're an author. I like to share the story that before I published my first book, I did it backwards. I got the cover done, and then I just put the cover on social media. I got all this great feedback, like, congratulations, so impressive, whatever. And I was like, and that satiated me for about 6 months. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I need to actually go back and write the book so I can put it out in the world. But the broader point I wanted to make is that as your confidence builds and you see that you have value to offer, and that you can talk about it from the perspective of an educator versus as a quote unquote salesperson, suddenly you're looking for like all kinds of opportunities to get your message out. I mean, you want to be on podcasts, you want to invite people on your podcast.
Right.
And the key thing about this, and this taps into the idea of authority, is that you really want to, it's like the whole idea of centers of influence, right? It's like, would you rather get one client at a time, or would you rather get 10 clients at a time? And so as you network and build relationships with centers of influence that are likewise relevant to your target audience or reader, suddenly you start getting exponential results because you're able to bring on people 10, 50, 100 at a time versus one-on-one. And the funny thing is that the work is the same. It doesn't take any more energy or effort to build a relationship with a center of influence as it does a, quote unquote, regular, ordinary person. It's the same amount of time and effort, but you just have to have the vision, the strategy, and ultimately the tools to do so.
I love that you point that out, and I've heard that used in different cases over the years of like, look, it takes just as much effort to try to win a client who has, I don't know, $200,000 of AUM, than to go after somebody who has, I don't know, $5 million, right?
Sometimes it's easier to go after the higher person because it's less, it's less of a, it's less of an emotional decision for them just because it's like, it's 5 million, whatever. Whereas the person who's, doing 50 to 100, it's like, this is like everything. I need to really trust you.
Well, and they haven't developed, they haven't had wealth yet. So they might be very nervous with that. Right. And they're more concerned. Like, so, but the other, to your point, the person with the larger account, oftentimes, if you're going to put the work in, you might as well put the work in and go after something bigger.
Exactly.
Let's shift gears into the use cases of the book. Yep. So one of the things you talk about in your specific book is you call out, hey, listen, I wrote this book because, right? I want to teach you how to do this. And I also, frankly, want you to do it with me. Yep. This is like a sales tool for me and my business. And the reason why I want to address the use case and then kind of maybe a couple of examples of actual prescriptive, like how they get implemented in the world, is that's different than what I've seen from other books, right? I've had several authors on this show. All of them are good people, smart people. Some of their books are better than others. But I have to say, like, you're the first person to like really use the book in a very specific, targeted way. So how do you recommend an advisor use their book? Like once it's written, like how do they go about getting it into the world? I mean, we're not looking to see these on the shelves of Barnes and Noble necessarily, right?
No, I don't even know if Barnes and Noble still is a thing or not. I mean,
oh, it is. My kids love it. I don't know. It's like they're both going retro. One of them, my oldest is into vinyl, and the youngest is like just like a book junkie. Like her library is off the hook. And so like at least once a week, she's at Barnes and Noble. She's got to touch and feel them.
She's rebelling. She's like, I'm going to show you, Dad. I'm not going to go to Amazon. I'm going to go to the bookstore.
Oh no, for her, it's very important, the condition of the book, and it's really fun to watch. She loves books like in a very special way, and it's really kind of cool to watch her shop because it's a lot. So anyways, okay, go back. I'm sorry. Barnes and Noble is the thing. So, but that's not our goal. We don't want to be a bestseller at Barnes and Noble. If that happens, wonderful. But
not opposed to it, right? But that's not the goal. And I'll just walk you briefly through the process, and then I'll get into a couple of use cases. So first and foremost, why write a book? My approach and philosophy is it's not as much as we talk about using it as an authority piece and being seen as an expert. It's really not the way that we go about it. It's not designed to be your life story. It's not designed to be a war and peace of everything that I think that has its place, but it's not what my process is designed to do to help financial professionals. A very simple analogy would be is that it's the best business card you can have. Most people get a business card if they're meeting in person, or they might get a brochure from someone.
Sure.
And guess what happens with it? It goes right in the trash can, most cases, or it gets thrown into a drawer and never to be seen again. What I love about a book as really a piece of marketing collateral, and that's the best way to view it, is that people tend not to throw it away. People, even if they don't read it right away, they tend to keep it on their desk. They tend to put it on their bookshelf. And the reality is that people are going to buy when the timing is right for them. When the circumstances in their life are such that now they feel a little bit of pain or a little bit of desire and they want to make a change. And that's where, whether that's immediate, whether that's 3 months down the road or a year down the road, you want your book to be accessible to them. So that's first and foremost. It's the business card that packs the most punch. Let's talk a little bit about process. And so our program is designed to help financial professionals write and publish their book within about 6 to 12 weeks. And we can do it honestly in, as soon as 6 weeks. Sometimes the process takes a little bit longer, but it's a very simple process that's built around meeting with a person once a week on Zoom. It's a very structured and guided process that we take them through. But the key to it is that our client does not need to be a writer. I think that's one of the biggest barriers that people have. One, what's the process, what I do? But the second is I'm not a writer, which is perfectly fine. I mean, if you have thoughts, opinions, experience, stories, and you have a goal to grow your business, that's really what we're looking for in terms of a good fit for us. So we take people through the process, and at the end of 6 to 12 weeks, we publish it, we help them publish it, and we do it for them to Amazon. And Amazon really, and the reason that we do that is that it's just, like everything that Amazon does, it's you're able to publish it there. You're able to print a single copy on demand. Gone are the days of having to buy, 5,000 copies and storing them in your garage and letting them collect dust. You can literally print a single copy on demand. If you have Amazon Prime, which most people have, Amazon will print it and ship it for free, all for the cost of roughly $3.50.
That's amazing.
And just compare that to like any other lead program that you have, any other marketing collateral that you have. I mean, the cost of postage to send something to someone is right there. And oftentimes it gets thrown away and never open, right? So again, the idea is to get it out into the world in a very cost-effective way. And so, every person, and it's not even really to be found. And so it's not like, hey, I'm going to go be found on Amazon and people are going to find it there, which is really the modern day Barnes and Nobles, right? That's not the purpose. Yeah. The purpose is through your intentional marketing efforts. Once you publish the book, whether it's having your own podcast, guesting on podcasts, using tools like LinkedIn to create awareness around it, some people will go and buy it, but it's not to make a profit. We intentionally encourage people to mark it down to the very lowest price, primarily because most times you're the one buying it and selling it. So there's no reason to jack up the price for yourself. And so at the end of the day, I think it's a very revolutionary system, which, there's no gatekeepers. There's no one that there's no one's permission that you need to be able to become a published author. You just need to have the courage and confidence and vision to do it. And once you do it, and once you create the manuscript, ideally with our, or we recommend with our help, but you can do it alone,
Yeah.
or with someone else. You publish it on Amazon, and now you have, I think, one of the most valuable pieces of marketing collateral that exists. And this will last not just a day or a year, but it can potentially last years and possibly even a decade.
So, and I know the answer to this question, but I just want to ask it kind of in a ridiculous fashion. So obviously we're not asking people to, as you said, buy thousands of books and just walk around just handing them to everybody who moves. What are some scenarios in which you can share that people who have published their books get them in the hands of the people they want to have the book in the hands of?
Yeah. I have a couple case studies that I prepared from clients of mine. And I know we have a cutoff at some point, but let me share the first one, which I think probably is most impactful and will resonate with people. So Mark Miller, he's been a client of mine for about 2 to 3 years now. We started by helping him publish his book, and the book itself, it's called The Tax-Free Business Owner: How Business Owners Can Use the Tax Code to Legally Pay Zero Taxes. Now, I don't know about you, but as a business owner myself, if I see that title and I see that subtitle, I need to know what's in the book. It's like
Right.
I just need
Yeah.
to know what's in the book because I don't like taxes, and if someone's raised my curiosity to believe that there's a better way of potentially hitting zero taxes, I want to know what that is. So Mark came to us. We first helped him write and publish his book, and then he came back and said, "Okay, how can I promote this?" And that's where he joined our LinkedIn program, which is most of our authors do, and we essentially run it as a turnkey system. He doesn't have to be on LinkedIn. He doesn't have to figure out LinkedIn, but we run it completely as a turnkey system for him and people like him. So we take advantage of all the great things that LinkedIn can do. Once you know your target audience, we can systematically reach out to them, connect with them. And the offer that we have for them, because a lot of people who are experienced on LinkedIn, guess what they don't like? Guess what they complain about? Oh, someone wants to sell me something, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
like someone wants to jump on a call and I, just connected with you 2 seconds ago, right? That is the broken way of doing LinkedIn.
Yeah. Right. For sure.
And so what I love about the book is that it takes what LinkedIn really is, which is simply the modern day phone book. It allows you to target the right people, but it allows you to then give them what I call a value offer. It's like, hey, great to be connected. I see that you're a business owner. If taxes are a concern for you, I just published my book, The Tax-Free Business
Yeah.
Owner: How Business Owners Can Legally Pay Zero Taxes. If that's of interest, I'd love to send you a complimentary copy. Now, if I'm on the receiving end of that message, guess what? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to click
Right.
because
Yeah.
you have my curiosity. I don't know you yet enough, but you've given me a value offer that willing to take me to the next step. And at that point, we move them into essentially a landing page where they provide their information, they opt in, and then we have a whole nurture campaign through email that's
Right.
designed to seamlessly take them from complete stranger to suddenly, I need to know, I need to schedule with you and I need to take advantage of this and all these good things. And once they show up on the call, because it's not to rush the process, right? It's to get the person to the call when the timing's right and when they're pre-educated enough to the value that you bring to the table. And Mark Miller reports to us, and this we've been doing this for a couple of years, is that his process is essentially that they initially have about a 20-minute call, and if they're a good fit and everything seems to work, he goes into about a 60-minute call and he closes it at 80%. And this is with
Wow.
affluent business owners who are paying a minimum of $20,000 a year in taxes, who he doesn't know from Adam. I mean, he's not even running this thing because we're doing this in the background, connecting these people, driving people through this process. But by the time they show up, he's the best thing since sliced cheese, or
Yeah.
whatever other cliche you want to use.
Yeah. Well, they're pre-qualifying themselves.
Yeah.
It's awesome. That's a great use case. Okay, so we only have a couple of minutes left with each other, but I do want to tackle a fun one,
Hmm.
and that is audiobooks,
Hmm.
right? So we're seeing a dramatic increase in the use of audiobooks by people of, frankly, from all walks of life. I think it's because Spotify and CarPlay, whatever, is all built into our phones and our cars now. So and I don't know about you, but I've always got my AirPods
Yep.
in when I'm walking around the house or whatever. So while I personally do prefer paperback books or having the paper when it's something I need to really understand and I want to get it, that's the format I go to. However, I enjoy audiobooks if I'm like, I need to get this information in my dome quickly, right? Like I just don't have time to dick around. Do you recommend that financial advisors consider recording an audiobook version of their book? Or are you thinking, stick with paper, trust me, this is the way we go?
I like both.
Yeah.
I think there's value to first, to a paperback and getting that into someone's hands. And of course, we'll call it the challenge, even though it's a short book, the challenge is always to get someone to read the book, to not skim the book, but to if the book is doing its job, it's going to make the case for you and bring them to the conclusions that you want to bring them to through, the persuasion that's going on throughout the book. But the key to that is that the reader actually has to take the time to read it or to consume the content. What I love about audiobooks, and I can say this for myself, is that, I get both physical books, I get audiobooks, but my preference personally is to listen, because I can be walking my dog, I can be doing some work, I can be doing whatever. I'm much more likely to consume an audiobook than I am a written book, or I'm much more likely to do it quickly. And if you tie this back to the sales process, like I have a call later on today with someone who heard me on another podcast, he scheduled a call, he does like $1 billion of AUM. And guess what I did prior to today's call is I sent him an email, looking forward to our conversation. If you have a little bit of time, here's a complimentary version of my book. Here's the audiobook. Takes about an hour to listen to. Please listen to it in advance of our call so that when we talk, we can really focus in on what's most important to you. Now, is he going to do it? I don't know. But here's the thing is that if he doesn't do it, I'm going to make that a part of scheduling a second call, because I don't want to ever get to a second call without someone taking the time to have read or listened to my book. It doesn't really matter which way they do, but I find through experience that people are more likely to take action around an audiobook.
Fantastic. And by the way, that is an old sales technique called negging. I thought
that was a pickup.
But it's awesome.
I thought negging was for picking up checks.
I think it actually came from sales and then it evolved into the dating scene. But it's basically like, you might not be right for us, Ben, or might not be right. This might not be the right time. And it's basically the person's like, whoa, what? Not the right time. I'll read the book, I promise. Anyway,
it works incredibly well. It works incredibly well with the right people. In the introduction to my book, I tell a little story about Tim, who didn't do the homework, didn't read the book. I said, this is not going to be a good use of our time. He then promised to read the book. Since then, he's become one of my best clients, great friend, referred the heck out of people. But it works.
It's fantastic. Well, listen, Paul, I know you have a hard stop. It's been fantastic having you on the show. People are absolutely going to want to follow up. What is your favorite website to have people come visit so they can follow up with you and learn a little bit more about the short book formula?
My easiest one is to remember is moreclientsmorefun.com, and that will forward you to my shortbookformula.com website, and you can pick up a complimentary copy there and see a number of other interesting things about our programs and everything else.
Fantastic. Well, this has been great. Thank you very much, Paul.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to and/or watching this first episode of the rebooted Modern Financial Advisor podcast. It's so wonderful to have you here. As always, love to hear from you. Please do reach out. You can find us on all the places you like to find us. I'm easy to find. I'm at Mike Langford, basically everywhere in the world. We'll be putting together the socials for this show to make it a little easier to find. We'll create an email, and maybe I already have one and you're seeing it below. But we'll make it really easy for you to reach out and get in touch for suggesting guests and topics and so forth for the show as we get going. Okay. All right. That's it. Hope you're having a wonderful day, and make sure you be nice to each other. We'll see you next time on the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. See ya. Bye. That part hasn't changed. Bye. It's like my calling card. It's like my goodbye card. Anyway, bye.